Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Hey Sister. Hey Sister, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Just I'm ready to hear about this new strain and all the other things. That COVID is the gift that keeps on giving, I guess.
It don't want to leave us alone. We are so excited to have back with us Dr. Mo. Hey, Dr. Mo.
Yes.
Happy to be here. Happy to be here.
Well, we know you still watching the Saints game the last few minutes, so y'all, we're going to just throw up a prayer. Hail Mary for grace for the Saints. It's all right. How about that?
No, it's done.
It's done. Oh, well.
We done lost by 3 points, and I'm feeling some kind of way.
Oh, okay. Well, we got one of our super fans on. Hey, Jody. How you doing? So we need you, Jody, and whoever else is coming online to like, follow, and share this episode. We need you, please, because we are here to dispel myths and talk about facts. We're here to get the real deal and information. And as we were preparing in the pre-show, we talked about that. We had Dr. Mo on April 15th. And so it's 8 months ago. This pandemic has just continued to wreak havoc here, especially in the United States, largely because of human behavior. We're going to talk about that a little bit too tonight. But we do have some hope. We do have some promise with the vaccines. But I told Dr. Mo I had to talk a little bit about him in the intro because he's been on these other platforms. So we have these dear friends. So I don't know if you know, we have mutual friends in Blair and Brandon. And so I saw you on the Savage Chat series.
Yes.
And so they say,
okay.
You are savage. You are a savage. And in for his intro song, so I had because I appeared as well, so I had a different intro song. But your intro song was "Let Me Find Out." So if y'all don't know, let me find out. See, I told you I was gonna have a surprise for you. And so,
R.I.P. the Fifth Ward. We be another one we lost.
Another one we lost. So let me find out. And you talk. I want you to talk a little bit about, because some of this, what I want to say tonight. Let me find out you don't get that vaccine. To some of y'all out here, let's talk about. Let me find out.
Yes. I think that there is so much synergy and possibility in friendship. There's so much synergy and possibility in supporting good things that matter to you. And so it was an easy thing for me to support Blair and his Blair and Brandon and their ascent and access. It's an easy thing for me to support you two on this platform because we are friends that are talking about stuff that matters. We're moving the needle on things that matter. And so yes.
Well, we are so glad to have you. And I will say that I am hoping that we get a remix of Where the Money Reside, I'm waiting for the bounce version. I don't know about.
And that dude is right here in Louisiana.
Of course.
That Honda dealership is just on the edge of Baton Rouge. So my medical assistant in clinic has bought 2 cars from him. So that may be somebody everybody else looks and sees on like TV or on the internet. That's somebody that touches real folks I know down here.
Absolutely. And we love it. So, well, let's just dive in. So if you are out here watching, this is where you need to definitely, hey, Sonny LaBeouf.
Hey, Sonny, congratulations. I got to say it again. She was the Woman of the Year for the city of New Orleans. So,
yes, beauty and brains and everything else in between. Our city attorney, Sonny is a superstar.
Yes, she is
a superstar. Keep your eyes on that woman there, because Black women lead, and that woman right there is going to lead somebody somewhere beautiful.
Amen. Yes, she will.
Well, y'all join the conversation in the comments, because I know that you have questions and we're going to answer those questions tonight. But first, I want to ask Dr. Mo, tell us about the vaccine. So you, as a healthcare provider who is still, you really on the front lines, you were one of the people who got the Pfizer vaccine this past week. Tell us about your experience.
what really speaks to me is Kamara Jones, who is a physician and a public health professional and epidemiologist, was on CNN, and she was talking about how we shouldn't try to convince Black people to get the vaccine. She said what we should do is we should provide information, provide our stories and perspectives, and give people a free space and place to ask questions and come to their own understanding, and they will get where they need to go. Mm-hmm. But it shouldn't be the hard sell. And that's where I am on this. So I'm not here to convince other people that need to get the vaccine, but I'll say I support it 100%. Mm-hmm. I'm not here to make anybody do right, but I'm here to say I chose it. And there's nothing more sacred to me than my life. Okay. And so when you talk about putting skin in the game, there's nothing more I can put in the game than my life and safety. And I put it up. Mm-hmm. Why did I do this? Well, the vaccine came to us from technology that's old. Like, this isn't something they just came up with. The technology that created the vaccines that are coming to market right now is 30 years old. That's older than all y'all's kids. That's older than some of y'all listening to this program. Okay. Secondly, this vaccine has been tested on tens of thousands of people. You say, how is that possible? It's possible because of the prevalence and the ways people are acting right now with this COVID. Mm-hmm. If we were more at home and reserved and staying to ourselves, it would have taken longer to get the same amount of data. But because there's so many people out there that don't believe in masks, that don't believe COVID does anything, that are going acting and going to the trap party, going to the wedding, they go into the funeral, they go into all these things like COVID didn't exist, that gives us the data to understand if we expose you to this vaccine, is it going to protect you? So after all of that, I made the decision to say that Black people have been on the short end of the stick for so many things. We've been treated bad by the medical industrial complex in many ways, but I want to make this move from being just COVID killing us and infecting us more to us having more protection from and life after COVID. We can't be a part of all the terrible stuff and exclude ourselves from a part of the promise that comes from it. So I put myself up there to say I got the vaccine. It was sore in my arm for maybe 24 hours, but we're going to see where this goes. We're going to see where this goes. And I encourage everyone in the sound of my voice to look at the information and really strongly consider when your time comes up, get protected because life is waiting for us on the other side.
Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you for saying it like that, because I know that one of the things we want to do tonight is about empowerment, right? Because knowledge truly is power. And in the past, because we did not have the knowledge, because we did not have the voice, because we didn't have even agency over ourselves, we can move and operate in a certain way when it comes to the medical industrial complex. We have that now. We have doctors like you now. We have the sisters who are leading the research right now. You know, so we have that now, and we have to fully operate in it. And that's what I want us to do. And that's really kind of the aim for this evening's episode, is to talk about how we can move in that way and really, really be informed. So everybody, I'm going to be dropping different links in the comments as we go along so that you can get the information you need. Because I'm going to tell you right now, this science is just like the Bible. You got to know the Lord for yourself. You got to read the word for yourself. You don't read the word for yourself. You can be convinced or confused by somebody else and their work.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, a lot of people were convinced and confused by a doctor who went out there and said all kind of things, you know. And when the president of the United States made a joke about bleach and said it to a medical professional, and then later said it was a joke, but obviously there were people who believed it and
but
even
you know what, Chris, in those situations, I don't listen to what you say. I look at what you do. And that president may have said, let's inject bleach. But he didn't inject no bleach in himself.
Right.
He might have talked about COVID, wasn't anything to care about. But when he actually had a problem, he went right to Walter Reed and got everything that everybody else has no access to. And now that the vaccine came out, this vaccine for something that was no big deal, he made sure his staff and team got vaccinated even before somebody like me that practices medicine.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm listening to you, but I see what you do, I can make a discernment.
Absolutely. Well, I want to do this for a second. So there's a lot of, so Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson, everybody's in. So Pfizer came out first. That's the one you took. So with the Pfizer vaccine, it came out, I guess it's been a week now. And then this past Friday, Moderna went before the FDA for their emergency authorization. They're approved. AstraZeneca, that trial is still going, because I think that's AstraZeneca in Oxford, I believe.
Yep, it is. That's the one over in Britain.
Okay, so that's ongoing, and then Johnson Johnson, they have a study. So let's talk about this. Is one manufacturer going to be better than the other?
So what I say about this is like brands of a shoe. There's some people that are just diehard Nike fans, and there's other people who love Adidas. And there's no way I could say as a Nike lover that Adidas shoe is better or worse than mine. And there's no way that Adidas shoe can say my Nike shoes are better or worse than theirs. There might be at some point later, and this is just me guessing and thinking, some effect or benefit of a specific type of vaccine to a specific type of population, but we don't have that yet. Right now, the two vaccines that have been given emergency authorization in the United States are the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. Both of them are over 94% effective, okay? That means, chance aside, there's over 9.5 times out of 10, this vaccine is going to do right by you. For a vaccine to be approved and to move on to emergency authorization, you just have to be better than 7 times out of 10, 70%, okay? So let's just think about this. We're not talking about the difference between Pfizer and Moderna. It's orders of magnitude. Both of them are well above the threshold to be considered, right? So what makes them different is how they're stored and how they're distributed. So what I predict is that the Pfizer vaccine that requires super cold temperatures for storage, super cold temperatures for transport, with the kind of thing that we can get to big cities that have big tertiary care medical centers and institutions that have the kind of freezers and have the kind of access to delivery that make that fussiness and how it has to be stored and transported no big deal. The Moderna vaccine is going to be really interesting because it doesn't require all that and gives the same efficacy. So all these places that don't have a big hospital nearby, that don't have a bunch of delivery options nearby, can get access to just as much coverage from a different product. And that's the beauty of competition in this free market system. That's why it's wonderful there's more than one company that makes a good vaccine. Because what's good for you depends on what you can get.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
That's the difference between, like we said, having the vaccine and being vaccinated. Just because something is available, if you can't get access to it, guess what? It won't even matter what's available if you can't get access to it. And I know that as we go down the line, even with the AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson, those I don't think have any of those storage thresholds, those cold thresholds. So it's going to be interesting in how it's able to get, because, hey, we're from rural Louisiana. So that's what we're from right now. I live in a city now where it's a major metropolitan area where the hospital system has vaccine access to their system. But, I drive so many miles outside of the city of Orlando. It's a whole different story.
Correct. So
it's going to be, it's like you said, it's the beauty of having competition and having different products on the market. Let's see. We have a question here. It says, I've heard that 80% of COVID patients are vitamin D deficient. This has been in the news a lot recently. In addition to getting sun and taking supplements, what else you can do? Also, how quickly can you turn vitamin D deficiency around?
Okay, so the first thing I want to say is that vitamin D nor any other vitamin is going to protect you against COVID. That's something that people want to look for, something they can control and fix. That's one of those things that you should do for just general health reasons, but it's not going to impact your ability to fight off, have or not have COVID. Those two things aren't together at all, okay? Second thing is not just about your vitamin D level. It's about whether or not that vitamin D is activated. Because just because you have vitamin D doesn't mean it's actually been activated by sunlight and it's actually in a form that you can use. Okay. So I don't really like to get sidetracked talking about vitamin D being necessary or not necessary to protect against COVID, because those two things don't go together.
Right, right. But, and I think one of the things so that here is that's interesting is that once we start, so again, we've been dealing with COVID now, just at a year, we start learning about the population, right? So now this is something that's been uncovered about the population of people who've had severe infection, right? This some discovery about them.
But the problem with that is that,
yeah.
And I'm sorry to interrupt. The problem about that is that people that are critically ill are going to have abnormalities in their vitamin levels. So I don't know if the vitamin level led to their critical illness or the fact that they were super sick made their vitamin levels off.
Right.
So just because two things go together doesn't mean that they're causative in their association.
Yes. I think that's the key. That's definitely the key. So then let's talk about this. So because so many people have talked about, okay, the speed. Emergency use authorization. This is a process.
Yeah.
These vaccines aren't the first drugs to have an emergency use authorization. No. So talk about, why do we even have emergency use authorization processes?
Okay, so part of the job of places like the FDA and the CDC and those sorts of public health entities are to make sure that when someone says drug X can cure disease Y, there's data to support that. There's a process that any of these drug manufacturers have to go to say that what I'm producing not only protects you from illness, but it also doesn't have so many side effects that it actually causes other problems. Those are the two things you have to be able to prove in a regulated system and process. You have to prove that it actually can protect you and it doesn't hurt you, right? So emergency use authorization, what that means is that right now we need something that moves quickly. The process of understanding what drugs do isn't something you can do quickly. For example, if a side effect or a thing that happens from a drug that you use only happens one time in 200,000 people, and it only happens if you've been on that drug for a year or more, that sort of side effect isn't going to present itself in something we've only been treating and knowing about for 12 months. Just, it's not possible. So what the emergency use authorization does, it says the drugs we authorize for use in these emergent times have the ability to protect you and have the ability not to make you sick right now. There may be other things we need to know about them later. And there may be other things we need to understand about them before we give permanent authorization when we're not in emergency times. But that's for later.
Yes, that's so important, I think, to understand, because I think people, this whole sense of rushing, I do want to say that, listen, I spent 14 years in the pharmaceutical industry, and I'm going to try to do like I used to do, like break down the packaging for prescribing information. But the FDA is rigorous. I want people to be confident that our FDA is rigorous and its review and approval of medication. So we are blessed to live in a country
that has an FDA.
That has an FDA, and that the process is rigorous, and that so know that even with this emergency use, it's really because we're at mission critical with this virus. Over 300,000 people have died. We need to do something about this, or millions of lives are going to be lost. And that's why you even go for an emergency use.
Yes. The other thing I think I want to make sure people understand is that, yes, the FDA, the CDC, and all these governmental agencies report up through the administration. And there's lots and lots of criticism about this current administration and what they have and have not done. However, there are plenty of scientists and leaders and
all right, we're going to just hold a second because I'm sure that he's going to come back online.
There we go, Dr.
I'm
Moreau.
back.
Continue. Okay, there are plenty of doctors and scientists and leaders. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's plenty of doctors and scientists and leaders in these agencies that are career workers. They aren't political people. They weren't appointed by the president to do anything. They were doing this job before this administration came to bear, and they'll be doing this job long after the administration leaves. And I respect their professionalism, even if they have a boss that's not quite right. And I want everybody to take a minute and think about that. How many times have you been a good person and had a boss that's not quite right?
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't make you bad. That doesn't make your work bad. This means your boss wasn't quite right.
But I think, Dr. Mo, I don't mean to interrupt you,
Yeah,
but
please.
that brings up a good point. I think the issue, particularly with Black people and African Americans in this country, is that we have had such a peculiar, let's say, that history with medicine. And so why then, like you were saying when we started, the conversation shouldn't be to convince Black people to take the vaccine, but there seems to be a disconnect between the Black community and the science community, even for the fact that there are so many more Black scientists and doctors. And if there's an overall distrust or mistrust of the government, even though you're right, there are a lot of great people who work in our federal government. It's look at who is the ultimate messenger. So how do we overcome that aspect of it?
So part of what I have to say to people is that, again, look past what people say and look at what they do. Do you really think that if these vaccines were crazy, that man in office would have insisted that his entire staff be the first people vaccinated? Whatever he said, whatever he played up or played down, that's what he did. Okay? If this vaccine was so scientifically fraudulent, do you think there'd be all these pictures of Black doctors like me choosing to not just get it, but get it first and get it publicly? I could have gotten this privately. Nobody would have known the difference. But I didn't choose that. Okay? So I put this out there to say, look at the data, make your choices, and understand where we are. Like, I realize we have a history where the entire field of gynecology was based upon white men experimenting on Black women to understand how we were put together on the inside and how to treat that. I understand that there's a whole field of medicine and richness made off of HeLa cells, which stand for Henrietta Lacks. And that woman's genetic materials were taken without her permission and made whole people's fortune, even though her family, still some of which continue to live in poverty. I get that. I understand that we were allowed to suffer treatable things, like with the Public Health Service study in Tuskegee. Okay, and I say it that way. It wasn't a Tuskegee experiment. It was an American Public Health Service study. It was done in Tuskegee, Alabama, where people had a disease we knew how to treat, and they just didn't treat it to see what happened. I understand that's where we're coming from. But let me tell you where we are. We are in a situation where Black people are dying from this disease in ways and rates that shouldn't happen. There's a wonderful, wonderful group out there that's tracking disparate impacts of COVID on different populations. And you look at these things, and if Black people were dying from COVID infections at the same rate as white and Asian people, there'd be 8,000 to 12,000 more Black people alive right now. Okay? So whatever happens in Tuskegee and whatever wrong they did to Henrietta Lacks, and however crazy we got here, I don't think it's worth risking another 8,000 to 12,000 people denying ourselves a potential solution.
Okay. We have another question here. It says, how many people have to get vaccinated in America to achieve herd immunity? Now, we've had some that herd immunity. Whew.
Yeah, can we explain what herd immunity is? Because what did your president call it?
This is one of those things where people use terms and they need to understand it. So for most vaccines, people can get them and get them well. So let's start with polio. Polio was something that ravaged people. in the 1940s, 50s, so on, okay? And you don't remember it because we dealt with it. Polio is literally extinct in the wild, except for in 3 places on the entire globe. There's only 3 places in the whole world where polio lives in the wild because of vaccinations. And what does herd immunity come into? There are certain people that can't get that kind of vaccine because they're too young, they have an immunodeficiency, or they have some other medical problem that make them not a candidate to be vaccinated. But if they're surrounded by people that are vaccinated, the disease will never get to them.
Mm-hmm.
That's herd immunity, okay? For us to get there with COVID, upwards of 85 to 90% of the population has to be not affected by this particular virus process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We aren't anywhere close to there.
No.
Nowhere close to there. And
that's why you say your ass, in the house with your ass, okay? Oh, sorry about that.
So to get herd immunity by natural processes, we're going to sacrifice a 5% death rate.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't get to pick if my grandma's going to be that 1 in that 5%. You don't get to do that for me.
Mm-hmm.
And we already know that our grandmothers and grandfathers are going to be overrepresented in that group. Mm-hmm. So the process of saying we're going to use herd immunity to get to the other side is just saying we're going to sacrifice a bunch of people we don't think care or matter. Mm-hmm. I'm not here for that.
Right. And so for the vaccine, you're saying upwards of 75 to 80% of the population is going to have the vaccine in order for because the herd immunity comes with multiple things. It comes with the vaccine. It comes with wearing your mask. It comes with the physical distance. It comes with all of these factors playing into it, right?
So yes and no. And I don't want to get too far into the weeds.
Okay.
It's not that people have to be vaccinated per se. People have to be immune in some way.
Gotcha. That's the right word. Mm-hmm.
And so if there are enough people immune to this disease process, it can't move through a population. Now, whether the number of people that need to be immune ends up being 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, or 9.5 out of 10, we'll see what that looks like over time. But we know from past studies that a huge, overwhelming majority of the population has to be vaccinated for there to be herd immunity. Why do we know that? All these anti-vaxxers. We have not had problems with measles and all those sorts of things in decades. But there are certain populations and pockets of people where the vaccinated rate of people against measles has gone down into the 80s. It's not down into the 70s, 60s. So we're still talking a huge overwhelming majority of people are vaccinated. But with that drop down, all the kids that are too young to be vaccinated against measles, all the kids that have cancer and immunocompromised, all the adults that are immunocompromised because of their diabetes or whatever, are now no longer protected against a disease process that they would be protected against if we would do right by our fellow citizen. Mm-hmm. Herd immunity is not something you can look at to protect you. Herd immunity is something you give to your community because you're decent.
That's powerful right there. Well, let's talk about that. So I want to go into a little bit of packages. Let's see. Somebody says, I'm definitely going to get vaccinated. I'm just confused about when and how will I know when it's my time to get vaccinated. Yeah. So Nancy, you way down the line like me.
Yes. So the way that works is as these companies get approval and they actually ramp up production and distribution, we will have availability of vaccines different places. And the part that's crazy is that because we have 50 states and other territories that operate sovereignly, the way Louisiana does this versus the way Florida does this versus the way Texas does this are going to be different things. Mm-hmm. So here in Louisiana, I am fortunate to have a governor that's pro-science and to have health industries that were aggressive and on the front line of doing research about COVID and some of its disparities. So I think that's related to why I was able to be among the first people in the country to get the vaccine, because not only was it scientifically proven, but I also had a system around me that actually brought it my way. There are people in Florida right now that probably would qualify to get the vaccine, but they don't have it because it turns out the state of Florida didn't actually order any from Pfizer. If you didn't order any, you ain't gonna get no delivery.
Right.
If you don't get no delivery, even if it's your turn, there's nothing to give you.
Right. And that's why having a coordinated, something we talked about last April, a coordinated federal response is so very important in these matters of emergency, because it's like, no, you can't do it the way you want to do it. This is the way we all have to do it in order to really achieve, like we said, the level of immunity so that we can operate as people want to go back to normal. That's the only way you get back to normal is if you have a coordination. So we have hospital systems here in our area in Orlando that absolutely, they had vaccine this week. They're rolling it out. Their frontline workers, there's the doctors are taking it. But for, like you said, for the rest of us, did our health department get any? What did our state health department do? Because you know, that was a time, I don't know if y'all remember, if you old enough like me, you didn't go to your doctor for no vaccine. You went to the health department. We all went to the health department.
You better tell them.
You had that little card like this, little card lines, and they wrote on there. We all went to the health department and got our vaccines. But as a nation, our public health system has changed. We have let some things go that we need to. Hopefully, this situation will help us reassess and reevaluate.
Well, talk about elections having consequences. This is one of those unintentional consequences of having somebody who doesn't really believe in science at the helm, right? When I believe, Demetria, you said that your governor also felt like you all should only take one dose.
Because the efficacy was at 50% after the first dose, then he was like, well, maybe they could only just take one dose.
Demetria, what makes me crazy about that is that's what he'll do for you, but that's not what he's going to do for himself and with his family. And so again, I believe that everybody has a right to health. You have a right to the access of all the fruits and largesse of this country, not just if you know the right people. This is not the hot party at Essence. That's not what this is. You shouldn't just be able to get in just because you know the right person at the door. This isn't trivial that way. This is life or death. You know, and what I want to talk to people about is that don't let your voice be manipulated. Okay? Don't let them make you believe it's okay to settle for putting yourself and your family at risk. I, in 2020, have not experienced personal death or loss, meaning I haven't died, I haven't been so sick I've been in the hospital. Many, many, many other people in the United States also have not experienced personal death or loss, but we've all experienced a lot of things economically. There are only 1 in 5 Black people that have jobs in the country, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor, that can work their jobs remotely. Think about that. That means 4 in 5 people that are Black that have jobs are negatively impacted by the fact of what we have to do to control the spread of this virus. Okay? So if you don't believe me that this is scientifically right, we need to do something for you financially to make this right. Second thing to think about it in all of this is that no matter how this affects you personally, this has the ability to affect somebody you love tremendously. So even though I got COVID and had such a mild experience with it, I felt bad at one point and had a terrible backache, but I didn't have to go in the hospital. So that's mild. It didn't kill me, and it didn't kill anybody I love. But imagine having the same process happen and you live with somebody of a different generation, or you live with somebody on a medication, and that person isn't so lucky. How do you carry the burden knowing that your selfishness dooms somebody you love? I really want to push back against this rugged individualism that's American ethos and say sometimes the collective isn't communism. Sometimes the collective isn't socialism. Sometimes the collective is decent and moral.
Come on.
You better say that. Sometimes the collective
is decent and moral.
and
Yes. Because I just don't, I guess the thing that I struggle with is, listen, if you don't want to take a vaccine, and let's face it, we do have an anti-vaccine movement in this country. If you don't want to take a vaccine, fine, but then have the decency to stay at home. Have the decency
and wear a mask.
Wear a mask. Have the decency to wash your hands and keep your hands out of your face and nose and eyes
and mine too.
Like that. And right. Have the decency not to get up in somebody's space, their personal space, when you're talking to them. Like, if you're not going to do those things, if you're not going to take the vaccine, then at least do those things. But we have gotten to this very strange place where people believe that their rights, like, it is okay for their rights to infringe upon somebody else's rights. And I don't know how we got there exactly.
But you know what? I have some thoughts on that. Again, we're Americans. We're rugged individualists. Okay. We trust what we know and see and believe and experience over all else. And we've had a long history of people saying, well, those eggheads and ivory towers are talking down to us. They don't understand what's going on with the real people. That's where this starts. Okay. And I'm going to put it to you like this. I have an MD, PhD from Harvard. I don't have any problem knowing and explaining what I understand and what I'm good at, period. But just because I have those things doesn't mean I understand tax law and finance. I hire an accountant to advise me and help me. Am I too dumb to learn accounting? No. Could I learn accounting? Yes. But that's not where my sweet spot lies. And I want everybody in the sound of my voice to say, submitting or deferring to an expert doesn't mean you're dumb. It doesn't mean you haven't read anything, and it doesn't mean you're not capable. It means that there are some things you can outsource that you don't have to live and experience yourself to learn. That's a lesson earned versus a lesson learned. Learn from me, but don't earn it with your own sweat and equity.
Amen to that.
And perhaps life.
And perhaps life.
Well, we're going to try to do this because, like you said, you know enough that you know what you don't know, and that you do need to seek that wise counsel. So what I want to do is I want to break down a package insert a little bit for people.
Yes, break it down.
I'll read package insert. Because here's the thing. Every drug that you have that is prescribed to you, now I don't know if it comes attached to it a little more, because I think they tried to save the amount of trees, so they usually just tell you the website where you can go get it. But every drug that has been approved by the FDA comes along with a package insert. And that package insert tells you everything that you need to know about that drug. It's going to tell you about the clinical trials, what was used to the trials that were done to approve it. It's going to tell you about side effects. It's going to tell you everything. And so I have printed here, and it's a lot of pages, and you can't really see it that well because of the shadow of the reflection, but I'm going to just break it down to you. I dropped the links in the comments so you can go and get them, download them, print them off for yourself.
Well, girl, which one are you doing first? Let's follow along, girl.
Yeah, so I'm just going to do Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine.
Okay.
And so here's the thing, what I want everybody to know. So this was an emergency use PI. It's going to change a little bit, like you said, once it gets permanent approval. But for the most part, a package insert, it follows the same script. Number one is going to tell you it usually says indications and usage. Here it just says authorized use because this is an emergency authorization, right?
Mhm.
So number one is going to tell you why you use it, what it is used for.
Yes.
Period. And so here, number one, authorized use says that this vaccine is authorized for use under an emergency use authorization for active immunization to prevent coronavirus disease 2019 or COVID-19 caused by severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2, which is SARS-CoV-2, right?
Mhm.
In individuals 16 years of age and older. So that gives me an idea, an indication that it was only studied in people who were
Grown
16 and older. So that's what it's used for. Now, when this becomes permanent, that number one is going to say indications and usage. But number one, no matter what drug is out there, you can go pull it up for your Zyrtec. It's going number one is going to tell you indications and uses, and Zyrtec is indicated for it's indicated for allergic reactions by boom, 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 boom. Same thing. So that's always going to be number one. Number two, it tells you dosage and administration. So how you gonna get it? How's it gonna get into your body? And so this one, it says for intramuscular injection only. So it ain't coming in a tablet. It ain't coming in a pill. You know, because some things you have 20 milligram tablet, 40 milligram tablet, this, that,
ain't coming like that.
Whatever dosage that they have, it will list them all out. And it will tell you how to use. Some things are dosed. It will say BID, which is 2 times a day. TID could be 3 times a day. Or QD is going to say once a day. And that's what that means. Okay. So this one, under its dosage administration, because remember, it's kept at sub-zero temperatures. It tells you first you got to dilute it, so you got to prepare to be diluted. Because first you got to defrost it, because it's kept at -80.
So I'm gonna tell you, not to interrupt you, but I've had a few questions with people that asked me when I got my vaccination, was it cold going in? People, how they store it is not how it's administered. You have to store all your food in the refrigerator, but you don't eat it that way. You don't eat your food how it come out the refrigerator. You keep it there so it don't go bad, but you take it out and eat it a different way. Same with this vaccine. You have to store it a certain way. But when you're actually ready to administer it, it was not cold going into my arm at all.
Exactly. And so I'm not going to go through each of these sections because it goes 2.1, which tells you how to dilute it, how to prepare it. And 2.2 is going to tell you how to administer it, how much needs to be in the vial. I mean, it tells you everything. So if you have any questions, so if you at the doctor and you looking at them put it in your arm and you like, okay, well, how many mLs is that? This will tell you. So before you go to your doctor, you need to know how much they're going to give you. This package insert is going to tell you all of that.
It looks like it has some pictures too, for those of us who enjoy pictures.
Yes. So it has live pictures. It talks about how I need, no more than 2 hours at room temperature. Okay. Because you got to thaw it, but then you got to use
it. Move.
Okay.
Now, what's really interesting is this is the part that people don't really think about. Something that has to go from frozen to administered in less than 2 hours does not give you a lot of leeway to have a bunch of stuff laying around. What does that mean? You can't sit all your vaccines out at 8 o'clock in the morning and have people come between 9 and 12 to get vaccinated. You can't do it that way.
Right.
You know, and if you have somebody, say I live in New Orleans and I got to drive to Lafayette to vaccinate somebody, I can't take the vaccine out and drive to Lafayette, which is 2+ hours away from here, and administer it to nobody.
Right. Absolutely. And so that's why we talked about once more is available in the marketplace, once other manufacturers come online that don't have these refrigeration requirements, the availability for the larger population, so very, apparent and critical. So number 3 tells you the dosage forms and strengths. And so this form, it says it's a suspension for injection. So that means it's they have to do a little dilution to it. They have to do a little preparation to it because it's a suspension. So it defrosts, is not fully ready. They have to do a little something else to it so that it is ready to be injected into
and
your.
it's going to be off white in case anyone was wondering.
Yeah, because see, that's the thing about a package insert. It will tell you if your pill is off white, if it's supposed to be orange, if it's supposed to be red, if it's supposed to be scored, which means has a line in the middle where it can be broken. It will tell you everything about that medication because there is an issue with counterfeit medications in the marketplace as well. So if you read your package insert and you get a medicine and it don't look like what the package insert says it should look like, you need to report that.
So I have a question now then, because as Dr. Mo said, at this particular time, we won't have a preference. We won't be able to say, you know what, I like that Moderna. It sounds like that's for me. How would you prepare yourself if your number is called to get the vaccine? You just got to read both of them or print them both out?
Go and take what they have, because right now, again, we don't have a bunch of stuff available. We got one. There's a second one that's been authorized, but it doesn't exist anywhere. Like literally, it don't arrive nowhere until tomorrow.
That's
so
right.
As of right now, there's only one you can get.
That's right.
So there's really nothing for you to go back and forth about.
Okay, and so you should just be printing out your your Pfizer one right now. And then as others,
Moderna's available now. You can
Moderna will be available tomorrow.
But I'm saying, okay, so we can print both of these out and study, and then
the good thing about it is that the science behind both of these vaccines is very similar.
Yeah.
So that they're both messenger RNA vaccines, and if you want to go down that well hole, we can.
I do want us to go a little bit down. I don't mean to distract from the packages, sir, but I do think we should go a little bit down that, because I believe that is the difference between whether there's a live vaccine. The vaccine has live.
There's nothing live in this.
Right.
Nothing.
You science people know it. So explain that it's nothing live.
And a messenger RNA vaccine, what that means is that everybody's familiar with DNA. DNA is the genetic material that tells your cell what to do. It tells your cell what to do through its second lieutenant, mRNA. Okay? So the DNA is the boss. It makes the RNA, which then makes the actual proteins. The proteins are the output from your DNA that actually lead to all the different things and processes. So what an mRNA vaccine does is it introduces a messenger RNA thing into your cells that will then be transcribed by your cells' ribosomes, that's a fancy word for the thing that makes protein from messenger RNA, and create a protein product. That protein product will be seen as weird to your body. It'll be like, why is that there? Where'd that come from? I don't think I'm friends with that. And it'll mount an immune response to it. And so anytime that protein appears after that, whether it's that protein alone or that protein as a part of a larger complex in a virus, it'll recognize it and exterminate it. Okay? So you're able to prime the system to recognize an enemy that your body's never actually met without exposing you to the full enemy.
Yes. And that's how it works, because we have those, honey, we could go into the white cells, the T cells, the B cells, the leukophagous, all of these different things that are, are part of that response, but we're not. Just know that all of that is activated, right? That's an immune response. All of that's activated. So then after you talk about doses and strengths, it talks about contraindications. So contraindications basically is the only contraindication obviously is if you have a known reaction to any of the components of this medication, or if you have had a history of severe anaphylactic reaction. So when you say severe allergic reaction, please kind of explain what an anaphylactic reaction is for people.
Sure. The way this vaccine goes, there are some people that have gotten vaccines in the past And basically, when they got the vaccine, they had a life-threatening emergency.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't itch a little bit. They didn't cough a little bit. Their throat closed up. They couldn't breathe, and they actually had an emergency that almost killed them. That's a very, very specific kind of reaction. It's not the same as every time I eat avocado, it makes me throw up. That's not what that is.
Right.
Okay. And just because you have a reaction to one thing in the world, it doesn't mean it applies to this vaccine.
Mm-hmm. Right. Absolutely.
So if you're a person who carries an EpiPen for, say, peanut allergies, there's
nothing peanutty in this. I'm not saying that to be funny. There's nothing about what you react to that has something to do with this particular virus.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but I'm saying that would not be a case of a severe allergic reaction.
No, but I do encourage anybody, if you have any questions, don't take my word from it. Talk to your doctor.
That's right.
Sit down and say, look, I would like to get the vaccine if it's my time, but I have this in my history. Is this okay? Mm-hmm. And then that's where you can sit down and talk about the risks and the benefits and see how that comes together for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because I want to empower everybody in the sound of our voices to know their agency and to be able to ask their own questions and come to their own decision.
Yeah. And that's so that it leads us right into that next section, which is 5, which is about warnings and precautions. So what your doctor might say is that, you know what, you do have this. So I want you to come into the office and take this. So once you take it, I can monitor you.
Mm-hmm.
I can watch you for a little longer. I can make sure you don't have a reaction. Because if you're going to have an anaphylactic reaction, it's going to start almost immediately. It's not one that
starts very soon.
Yeah, it's not like you go home and tomorrow you have an anaphylactic reaction. No, it's
or as the people say, you wake up dead the next day.
Yeah, that's not what happens. It's something that happens almost immediately. So if you have that history, your doctor is probably going to say, you know what, let's wait a little, let's watch you for a little while longer before I send you out of here.
Yes, yes.
And so all of that's outlined in section 5. And in section 6, it gives you an overall safety summary. So it tells you about safety. So there's side effects and there's adverse reactions. Listen, a side effect, they have to document every side effect in the clinical trial. And so sometimes y'all see those commercials and y'all hear all that stuff and y'all like, what's all of that? Like, you took the vaccine and then you tripped and fell. Like, if somebody trip and fall and they were in the clinical trial, it has to be reported.
That bruise they got is reported. And they're going to be like, you bruised it.
Everything is reported. And so that doesn't mean there's a causality. And so you need to really, you break down and you start looking at these numbers. So an adverse reaction at the injection site. Well, that's normal. If you stick a foreign object into your body and 84% of the people had a pain at the injection site. Well, if I stuck you with a needle, you won't get a pain. Like, and so 84% of the people having that.
And I'm going to speak to that just a little bit.
Yeah.
When I got the shot, I didn't feel anything when it went in. When I say nothing, nothing. It was not like that tetanus shot where when it goes in, you just feel like everything is just nuclear weapon in your arm. It doesn't feel like that at all.
Right.
It's not like that terrible shingles vaccine. That one is particularly painful. Mm-hmm. And like the shingles vaccine and the tetanus vaccine, those things tend to hurt for like 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
My shot didn't feel anything going in, and it was only sore for about 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't hurt when I wasn't doing anything. If I poked it, I felt something, but that only lasted 24 hours. So when you're to your point, when they're talking about side effects, they ask, do you feel anything from it? And the answer would be yes.
Mm-hmm.
I had soreness in my arm at the injection site. Was it debilitating? No. I could still drive. I still could feed myself. My belly says so. There was nothing that got in the way of me being able to do.
Yeah. And so that is so important. So there are side effects and then there's adverse events, which are, those are the things that those are out of the norm. There's like side effects that we do not expect to happen. Most side effects we expect to happen. So when you see that commercial for your allergy medicine and they're like, people's side effects was a runny nose. Well, I expect if it's allergy season, they're going to have a runny nose. But if they had a heart attack, well, that's an adverse reaction. Like that does not, that's something different. but they were in the trial. It happened. So you should be reporting side effects and reporting adverse reactions. We do have a question here from Sunny. She says, if you haven't already discussed, what is needed for the community to become more comfortable with getting vaccinated? What needs to happen? And who does the community need to see getting vaccinated or hear from? Well, we hoping this will help, and we hopefully y'all will share this.
Yes. You know,
we're trying to break this down.
What I think is important is that people need to be treated like sentient beings.
Yes.
For folks to trust you, you have to be trustworthy. So for our organizations and public health officials, we have to be trustworthy. Okay, that's the first part. Secondly, I think it's so amazing to see all these Black doctors like myself, Chris Marrero. I can think of dozens of people here in New Orleans that are Black physicians that not only got the vaccine, they did so publicly and published a photo of it happening. That says to people, I'm not just telling you to do something, I'm doing it myself. Okay? So if we step back from vaccines and talk about how people are convinced, okay? Some people are convinced by data. And so for those people, we'll talk about the package insert like we're talking about now. We'll talk about the tens of thousands of people that things were trialed in. Some people are convinced by expert opinion. I saw Maurice getting that vaccine. Maurice is my dude, and I know he would never do anything crazy. So if he did it, I'm down with it. Other people are convinced by service. The vaccine may not be necessary for you personally, but they'll keep your whole family alive and everybody you care for. So if you want to be able to do your job and care for your family and protect them, do it for them. And I'm saying to people like Sunny that have this question, there's no one magic bullet. We need to provide all possible motivations for vaccination to reach all possible people that can say yes. Does that make sense? Or that sounds kind of crazy out there?
That makes perfect sense. And I think that's why we're trying to do a little bit of everything in this episode of Hey Sister tonight, right? Try to provide a little bit of practical, your own real world experience as not only as a physician, but as a patient, right? Because you took it yourself. We're trying to provide the data. And so you can read information for yourself. Again, you don't have to be able to decipher every bit of it. But if you know, okay, well, let me go look at this section because it's a Number 6 is what a clinical trial stuff is. Let me read that because I want to know who was in the trial, how the trials were set up. And it tells you all of that in section 6. And it'll tell you, they had multiples, they had 2 studies. So study one is usually your safety, so that they do anything to anybody. Study 1 is the safety. Study 2 is going to be your efficacy. That's kind of how it's broken down in here. And it tells you how many people got the placebo, how many people got the actual drug, and it breaks all of that down to you. It tells you about who those people were they Black, were they Hispanic, were they what age range they were. We know in this one it was all 16 and older, so this is not indicated for anybody under 16, but it's going to tell you.
Can we talk about that for a second? So this is one of those things in life where what people are motivated to do as people versus what the science says we're supposed to do are 2 different things. As a parent, you are programmed to put your kids first. As a parent, you are programmed to think about your kids before you think about yourself. This disease, for whatever reason of its biology, simply does not have the same impact on children it does on us. So this is one of the few times where your instinct to protect your kids really isn't where you're supposed to be. You need to protect yourself and your friends and your parents. Okay, and that's really hard. I mean, it's because it goes against everything we're talking about. So we're like, why are we just vaccinating 16 and up? What about our children? Kids under 10 especially, even if they get COVID, because they're not immune to it, they really don't have anything significant that happens to them. And you say, oh, well, what about this COVID-induced multi-organ system failure? There's always extremes and there's always rare examples, but those are a fraction of a percentage of the infections and even smaller fraction percentage of the deaths. So for this, the most important thing is that you, your parents and your peers are protected.
Mm-hmm.
We will get to the kids, but you all, the parents and the peers, are the ones that are really bearing the brunt of this and dying from this.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
And
Dr. Mo, I think
and I know as a parent, both y'all are parents, so that feels
no, I'm not a
crazy
parent, but I do know that's, I'm not saying that like it's bad. I'm just not a parent, but I think that's where then you have a lot of people who, for example, with the school situation, who have said, well, that's why the kids should go back to school, not thinking about all of the adults that they actually interact with on a regular basis at school. Right.
The teachers, the janitors, the cafeteria workers, all of those.
But what's interesting to me is that I'm gonna just put this out here. The NBA had a bubble.
Sure did.
Where they had a whole season with young, rich athletes. They had no infections in that bubble over months of time. Surrounded by people that were the least likely to obey social distancing rules and the most likely to have the money to get around it. Okay? What that tells me is that if we can do a bubble for the NBA, there's no reason we can't do a bubble situation for our kids. So this isn't really about our schools safe for our children. This is about, do we have the will to do it right? Because if we do it right, they'll be safe. If we do it janky and messed up, it won't be. But we have the data from the NBA bubble showing us that we can do this with lots of people and lots of different teams from lots of different places and keep folks safe.
But that's will and resources. And like you said, if you live in a place where people say they value their children, but we know how you educate, how you fund your schools, that tells you all what you need to know about how much you really value education in your children. So
but I do think that's a fascinating study that the NBA was able to do what it did. And let's look at the other leagues. Baseball did not crack down like the NBA did, and they had problems. Football did not crack down like the NBA did. They had problems. The NBA was like, we're going to do it, and we're going to do it ridiculous, rigid, harsh.
And if you want chicken wings from the strip club, your ass ain't coming back up in here.
Period. And when you try to sneak a stripper in here because you dressed like you, we got monitors. We saw that. We putting her and you up out of here.
Yes, right.
because again, what's so crazy about this thing is that we know what we need to do to make this right.
Right.
Whether there's a vaccine or not. Do we have the will to do that? And people talk about, what about schools? We know from the data, when we talked about this last time, that there was a wonderful experience where they looked at the Boys and Girls Clubs and these child care centers that were taking care of the kids of first responders, because those first responders had to go to work. So they needed some sort of child care because they couldn't just leave their kids at home. So we had dozens, hundreds, thousands of kids from all over the country who were the children of people that had to go to work, right? What happened to them? They were in pods of a limited number of people. Those pods stayed together. They did things together. And if there was a problem in one of those pods, it didn't spread to the other ones, we can contain it. We have the data to know what to do. Now that costs money.
Exactly.
If you got a teacher ratio of 1 to 30, you can't make no pod.
Well, it costs money and it also takes discipline. And again, and you got to kick out the strip club chicken wing goers, right? You got to kick those out.
The kids is not as much an issue. Kids follow whatever rules you have.
Right.
That's why we're the adults.
But the adults. So yeah, I mean, I think to your point, for everybody who says we want to go back to normal, which honestly, I have a problem with us saying that anyway. We need to go back. We need to go to being better.
What stuff do we want to keep after COVID?
Amen.
Yeah.
Okay, because what I would like to keep is, I love the fact that there are no longer buffets. You got individual service. I mean, even after COVID.
Okay, a man of my own heart.
I don't really want that to come back.
I can't stand a buffet. I just think that is just the nastiest
So that's
situation.
my thing. So what do you want to keep? What do you want us to keep after COVID, Chris? What you want us to keep?
Listen, I'm okay working at my house. I don't need to see them people every day. I can see you if I gotta go once or twice a week. I can do that, but I don't need to see y'all every day. I like getting up. I like having, a meal at home, a home cooked meal. I don't have to worry about buying something if I didn't bring my lunch that day. Yes, I can work. I can continue working from home for a little
What
bit.
about you, D? What do you want to keep after COVID?
Oh wow! What do I want to keep up? I've been working from home for years, so that part is not really.
He didn't ask you about that. He said, "What you want to keep?" Don't be talking. Don't be judging my what I want to keep.
One of the things I want to keep people washing their dang on hands, because I think one of the things this has shown us is that people are nasty.
And some of them still ain't washing their hands, but
just keep washing your hand. And yeah, this one's yes. Curbside pick up.
I don't want to get out of my car and I want to put on pants.
No. Listen.
Thank you.
People got a lot of my money. I done ordered online and then just drove up and have you bring it to my car. Listen, it has been wonderful. Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So, I've tried to keep the restaurants alive in my area. So,
but I think that to your point though, the reason and this was a little tongue in cheek, but I think there's some things about this that we've learned that this is better.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that people spend a lot of money as a business and overhead having an office.
Yes.
And now we realized that offices can be virtual in a way that you didn't think about before, because you thought that if people was working from home, they was really watching soap operas and laying up on their couch rather than doing your work.
And sometimes they are, but guess what? You can do that sometimes and still do your work because you're working from home, so you don't have to have these traditional work hours. You don't
have these drive-by meetings and people coming into your office and disrupting you to get your work done.
Look,
get your work done.
The data shows people actually work longer hours.
Exactly.
Working remotely. So again, the thing we thought was true is not really true.
Someone says, can we keep at a distance when we checking out in person? Can you give me room to use my debit card without using our personal space?
Yes. Yes, we can. Like people talk about like stuff like Apple Pay. Let me tell you something. Waving my phone at you versus touching you, I want to keep that.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
That's good to me.
It is very good to me too. And so I will say this, for the rest of the package insert, those are the main sections y'all want to look at. We went through the main sections. The rest of them, there's other information. If you're in a special population, like you pregnant or a pediatric or a geriatric, it'll talk about use in those populations. That's going to be in section 11. Number 10, drug interactions. If it's going to interact with something that you may be on, those of you who are taking other medications, that's a section that you need to definitely look at. But right now there's not a lot of data on that, but that data comes over time, right? Because people are going to take that vaccine who are on different medications. So a lot of stuff we don't have right now, but more will be revealed over time. And that's what happens when a drug is in the marketplace. And that last section on
hey T, can we take a pause for a second?
Yeah.
Since this is Hey Sister, and women are watching this.
Yes.
The question is always going to come up, what do we do with vaccines in pregnant women or women that are breastfeeding?
Yes.
Okay? That is a reasonable question because we want to protect our Black women. We want to protect our women, all women. But we absolutely want to protect our thing. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, we call them ACOG, came out with a statement. And they basically said there's no data showing that these vaccines are more deadly or less deadly in pregnant or lactating women. And the recommendation from ACOG is that pregnancy and lactation should not be a reason someone does not get access to a vaccine they'd otherwise be qualified for.
Right.
Okay. And so I put that out there to say that pregnancy doesn't keep you less safe. Breastfeeding doesn't keep you less safe. we don't have data to show that that's even necessary right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so because it's a program, hey sister, I want to make sure the sisters know I'm thinking about you, not just you generically, but you.
But we also know, though, if you do become affected with COVID while you're pregnant,
yes,
what that the impact of that on your body
and on your baby,
and if you're not able to breathe while you're pregnant, that is going to be a whole nother set of issues. So when they talk about the benefit risk ratio, does the benefit outweigh the risk? Pregnant women are suggested to get the flu vaccine every year.
Absolutely.
It's beneficial for you to if you are pregnant to not have the flu, because the flu could be really detrimental to you and your baby. So those are things that we have to, that benefit risk ratio. And that's why you want to have these conversations. And that's what informed consent is about.
Yeah.
And you talk about informed consent, because I was on Xavier, we had our virtual homecoming, and there was a panel of doctors, because a lot of people went to Xavier to become doctors, and they were talking about informed consent. A lot of people in nursing home populations are going to be qualified to take this early.
Yes.
But some of them have a process of a dementia process.
Yeah.
But they may not be able to give informed consent.
Yep.
That's why their families understanding this is so very important.
Correct. Because their family's going to have to say, okay. And what's so painful here is that COVID has really, really, really showed what our society values.
Mm-hmm.
You protect and save what you value.
Mm-hmm.
Old people, non-white people, minoritized people, broke people are not valued to the same degree as others in this society, in our country. Mm-hmm. And the death numbers and infection numbers reflect that. There's nothing genetically different about us. Okay? Mm-hmm. And so part of what my mission is, not just as a physician, but as a Black man in medicine, is that I want my community not just to bear the brunt of misery, but have full access to the benefits. Mm-hmm. Okay? So when you're talking about vaccination of your loved one in a nursing home, this disease has decimated entire populations of nursing homes. Mm-hmm. So whereas the death rate may be 5% among the whole population, it's something orders of magnitude higher than that in a nursing home. And do you really want to consign your loved one to death because they can't live on their own anymore? Mm-hmm. Is that right? Mm-hmm. When I can make a choice to do something that will protect them, oh my gosh. Mm-hmm. Is there, and again, I'm not here to convince anybody. I'm here to say what I chose and explain my decision process and give you access to the data so you can decide what's right for you and your family. Mm-hmm.
So
now,
Dr. Mo,
I care because it affects all of us.
Right.
I'm sorry.
No. I was just going to ask you because, yes, we have these vaccines, but it's still going to be a while before the regular population gets it. So
not in grand schemes though. Like this. Let's think about this. Okay. It feels like a while, but we are 5. We went from knowing this disease existed a year ago to having possibly up to 4 products on the market 18 months later. Mm-hmm. Think about that. What can you accomplish in 18 months? People barely get a new job in 18 months. Mm-hmm. People can barely learn a new skill in 18 months. You can barely learn a new habit in 18 months. So this isn't really a long time in grand scheme of things.
Right. No. But I was saying it's still going to be a few months, shall I say, before those of us who don't have any specific health conditions, if we're not immunocompromised, if we're not in an aging population, it'll be a few more months. What is your estimate, or what would you guess would be like whoever that last group.
Second quarter.
Second quarter of next year.
Second quarter. So
Okay.
For people that don't know what that means, the year has 12 months. So each 3 months.
April, May, or June.
Okay. So second quarter is going to be the fourth, fifth, and sixth month of the year.
Yeah. April, May, or June. April, May, or June.
And the biggest caveat to that is, if the vaccines turn out to be as successful as we think they are, the biggest limiting factor is going to be production and greed. Production and greed. And I'm going to put that out there because we already are seeing that rich countries are hogging and hoarding vaccine doses. We already know that. So if this is the blockbuster we think it is, there's going to be some people that need it and deserve it and want it, but can't get it because their country ain't got enough stroke. And that's a whole moral thing.
Yeah. And we also seeing, a little bit of that right now, in that, again, when you don't have a coordinated federal response, we have supply chain issues.
Yes.
Right now we have the issue where Pfizer's like, no, we got this much vaccine in the warehouse. Y'all asses didn't order none. So UPS and FedEx ain't shipping. Or UPS and FedEx is like, we already backed up with our normal productions, or our normal holiday season distribution chain issues, and now we add in this whole thing in the mix. So we have to ramp up and prepare, because it had to be kept at sub-zero temperatures. So
they came up with packaging already for that.
A different type of packaging, different type of trucks, there's all of this stuff. So, but when you have a coordinated federal response, you can do that. But when each state is doing, different things, different ways, different what have you, we it's gonna be a little bit of an issue. And we also see our Congress, many people who said it was a hoax, they asses sure went up there and got back. They could have let somebody else
up there and got it. But again, that's what I said. Pay attention to what people do.
And not what they say.
Pay attention to what they do, because they said all kind of stuff, but not the old lady down the steps to get their first shot. And I think the other part about this that people aren't thinking about, and I want to put this out of the health realm and put it in finances. Okay, this pandemic has demolished the hospitality industry. It's demolished the service industry. It's demolished music. Those three industries are overrepresented in the Black community.
Yeah.
So if you make a living in hospitality, service, or music, you are feeling this in ways that other people in other industries are not.
Lord, that's all of New Orleans.
All of us.
All of it.
All of us.
Orlando. I mean, we the home of the hospitality industry.
Yes. And so getting this pandemic under control isn't just a health issue. It's the ability of us to have Black wealth. It's the ability of us to provide for our families. Okay? And so for the people that don't necessarily want to get into the science of this, I can just say, whether you agree with me or not, if we get enough people immune to this or resistant to this, your job will exist again. Work with me.
Work with me. All right. Well, I have one more thing that I do want to ask about and wrap up. So if you're still out there watching and you have a couple more questions, drop them in there. We went through the high points of the package insert, but there is information about long-term COVID effects. And then also just today and yesterday, London is like, okay, we're noticing the strain is starting to shift. So we know a virus is a living thing, like any other living things. Living things like to do what? We like to survive, honey. We will adapt to survive. And a virus is going to adapt to survive, okay? So you need to know that they are going to adapt. But the vaccines still will have effect because of So I want to talk about those two things, the long-term effects,
Mhm.
and then how the vaccine is still going to work, even though the virus will have adaptation.
So my background in medicine is I do pediatric rehabilitation medicine. That means I take care of kids with acquired or congenital physical disabilities. As part of that process, I am board certified also in adult rehabilitation medicine, physical medicine and rehabilitation. So we take care of people that have chronic functional conditions. So folks with chronic functional conditions from COVID are my kind of patients. That's who we take care of. So this as a concept isn't new to me. There's some percentage of people that get a process that most folks shake off and move from that they don't actually shake off and move from. And I think it's devastating because at the beginning of those, the people that are suffering from this aren't believed. People that are suffering from this are, it's so unusual. People are like, well, that couldn't be happening. So they feel gaslighted by the whole system. And the system doesn't exactly know what to do with them. Okay, because there's not financial resources for it. There's not codes where people can actually charge for the kind of services they're providing for it in the medical system. It's just nobody knows what to do. That's coming. And the first thing I'll say to anybody is if you had COVID and the residual effects are on you, I believe you, I see you, and there's somebody for you. Find you a rehab doc that's used to dealing with chronic illness, and we'll see you and walk you through that process. Okay. The second thing in terms of chronic stuff is there's always a bunch of people mixed in there that are BSing us. There's a bunch of people for every one person with fibromyalgia, there's 4 or 5 people that ain't really got it, but know how to fake it good. Okay. And it's sad that those 4 or 5 people that are faking it good take away from those people that really have something that's a problem. And it's a barrier to them getting there. But we people, it happens. So that's what I got to say about chronic illness. Does that answer your question, Dee?
Yeah, well, I know that some people are having, again, they're having long-term respiratory issues. They're having long-term, they were the blood clotting issues. There were these long-term lingering effects. And so that's one, I think, when again, in the big scheme of time, this virus is still very new.
It's a baby. It's an infant.
Yeah, the disease process is very new. What we know about the disease process is very new. Yes, it's related to another. Yeah, so there have been SARS before, but this is a novel, right?
Yeah.
This is a novel virus.
There's been cousins. We didn't have the cousins, but we ain't had this one before.
Right, we done had the cousins, but not this one before. And this one seems to be the queen mother. So,
in some ways, what's really interesting is that it's the queen mother in some ways, in other ways, it's not.
Right.
Because usually respiratory viruses obliterate young children.
Yes.
Preferentially. This just it's not. It just hasn't. So in a lot of ways, a virus this widespread and this virulent in adults, it's not
rare,
taking us off at the knees with the next generation. It's just not.
Right.
And if you look at stuff like cholera, which isn't a respiratory virus, that obliterated adults, kids, all comers.
Yeah. Yeah. So then the other question was about the adaptation. So the virus is adapting in London right now. They're like, oh, hell no, we shutting everything back down. Boom, boom, boom.
Yes.
Yep, y'all done got vaccinated, but they shutting down because they're the fear.
Yes. As viruses or any living thing recreates itself, there are errors in the process. Some of those errors you can live with and some of those errors you can't. And some of those errors result in something that makes the thing that had the error in it more viable than its peers. That is a 20-second explanation of evolution, if you will. Right? This virus is a living being that's evolving. And as it copies itself, it makes mistakes. And some of those mistakes aren't viable and go away. They go the way of the dodo or the dinosaurs. And some of those mistakes actually provide some protection against different things. Okay. The beauty of these mRNA vaccines is that we're not vaccinating against the virus as a whole. We're vaccinating against a key feature of a protein that exists in that virus for it to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So whether some things change on the inside, some things on the outside, that protein is still there. And the vaccine will make the body still recognize it. What the actual mutations will help us with is it helps us understand, did we actually get this virus from the original Wuhan strain? Or did this come from Italy? Or did it come from where? So that's why when people and politicians say crazy stuff like, we got this from China, it actually didn't come to the US from China directly. It came to the US through Italy.
Mm-hmm.
And Italy was a place that introduced the entire virus to the subcontinent of Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you know that? Because you look for these little differences amongst all the COVID strains to show what is related to who.
Mm-hmm. And where do we get that information from if we want to read up on that, or is that just for the medical community?
Well, the problem is most of those explanations are so far into the weeds that it's there, but you're going to have to really slog through some data and some real scientific talk to get to it.
Gotcha.
And that's what the World Health Organization is about, even though we have, thank God we want to go back to believing in science. Yeah. That's what the World Health Organization is about, and our participation with the World Health Organization, because we share information across countries and across continents about what the characteristics of the virus, the characteristics in the population. We share that information. And so I would say you could probably find some of that in some World Health Organization briefings and the data that they're discussing, because that's what they're on the lookout for.
Correct.
That's
and again, I don't think anybody should be afraid of the fact that this virus or any virus evolves.
Yeah.
The good news is it doesn't evolve like that flu virus. Because the flu virus evolves so much that we have to get a whole new set of vaccines every year for it.
Every year. Right.
It's not like that. So
and sometimes we had we got this
wrong
vaccine,
set.
the whole wrong vaccine, because the virus done showed up this way.
Okay. So this is how living beings work. They respond to pressure to make them go away. And now the other thing that's really interesting is that viruses that are super, super lethal don't last either, because they kill all their hosts. So it's like, you don't want to be so good at your job you kill everything. You don't want to be so bad at your job you can't be spread. Right. And so that's what we're working through here. That's what we're working through with the science.
Because if you're so good at your job and you kill everything, you die too. And the virus don't want to die.
Yes.
Viruses like us. We don't want to die.
Yes. And to all the people listening to this, the one good news out of all this is explaining public health and public policy in a way that people didn't understand. We knew what doctors were. We knew what nurses were. But public health is not treating one patient. It's treating a population of people. So anybody that's fascinated about how we talk about protecting groups and populations of people, you're a public health person. Anybody that wants to understand how we write laws and rules and regulations around protecting and codifying what physicians and public health professionals know we should do, you're a public policy person. Okay? So all you out there that have kids that you just thought they needed to be doctors, maybe they need to get a master's of public policy or a master's of doctorate in public health. Because that's what we need right now too.
Yes.
Or maybe they need to be an engineer and just trust the doctors and the the healthcare policy folks who know better than they do.
But engineers have played a role in this process too. Engineers have been role in this process. Yeah,
I wasn't smart enough to be a chemical engineer. Now, come on, now we got limitations. But no, that is a great way of looking at it. Everybody wants their children.
We have learned a lot about public health, and we have learned about when public health and public policy are done well and not done well, the impact.
Let me explain something to you. Those people down in Australia and that lady in New Zealand. That lady had a whole baby. A whole baby. I'm talking New Orleans right now. Had a whole baby and led a whole country. And they ain't got no cases, and they got enough vaccinations for anybody on the island that wants it. That's leadership right there.
Absolutely.
And that speaks to what happens when you have good leaders.
And when you carry your behind, your little privilege behind to the Cayman Islands, and people told you you're gonna be quarantined for a certain number of days, but you want to take off your wrist bracelet. You were like, oh, it's too tight, and want to have them loosen it so you could just jimmy it off so you could go watch your boyfriend in his jet ski competition. And now when they putting you in jail, you're gonna be like, oh, but it's too harsh of a penalty. We have policy and rules to protect our island.
Yes.
We don't have rampant disease on our island, and you're not going to carry your little butt from the United States over here and do what you want to do, because that's what good public health policy and public health just administration looks like.
Yes.
We have kept our island safe, and don't you come over here and mess it up
with that foolishness.
With your blonde hair and privilege. Okay. And now your grandma is, that's a little too harsh to have her go to jail. No, go on.
But again, you put people at risk, and I think policy has effect.
That's right.
Public health has an effect. And again, I just also want to take a minute to thank both of you for having me here.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for giving me a platform just to talk my truth and to share my life and experience, and hopefully that'll make somebody better. If there's anybody in the sound of our voice that wants to go to med school, or wants to be a public health expert, or wants to be a public policy person, reach out to me at Doc Mo Show, DOCMOSHO. I'm on that moniker on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. I want to talk to you because I want to see you as one of my colleagues. We need you, and I want you, and you belong.
Absolutely. Well, with that, we're going to go ahead and sign off tonight. Yes. Someone says, thank you for your wisdom. So informative. So what we want to say, if you have watched this and found value in it, share with your community and with your network, because that's the other piece about these conversations and having doctors like you have this conversation. You know, there's something about cultural competence and being able to have the dialogue. Like you said, you went straight in New Orleans. If you need, sometimes we got to go straight to New Orleans.
Yes.
You know, when we talking about, let me find out you ain't get that vaccine. Okay. Yes. You know, sometimes we have to go there with each other. So having this conversation in this way and trying to really break things down in simple terms, we hope that added value. And I know it adds value to me because, you know, people think that this stuff is so above their heads, and it's really not. You know, you know, the clinical trial, all the detail and technical stuff. But when they write these package inserts, guess what? They got to write them at an 8th grade level. You can get it. You can get the information that's accessible to you. And if that don't work for you, guess what? They put out a fact sheet. So they have it, you know, it is available to you. The information is available to you. And even when you have that information, just like you go to your pastor and say, well, what about this passage in the word? You go to your doctor, like Dr. Moore, whoever, and say, okay, this is what I read. I need you to have a conversation with me. Like you said, like I am. What's the word you use? Sentient?
Yes. Sentient.
Sentient.
Being, a sentient being.
A sentient being, a being with agency over my own life, so I can make an informed choice and an informed decision for myself, for my children, for my aging parents. So that's it. That's all I got. Sister, what you want to say in closing?
That's all. We're going to wrap it up. This has been wonderful. So let's wrap it up. Thank you so much, Dr. Mo. You're always welcome here. So whenever if you have something that you want to come on the show to talk about, you will always have a platform in Hays.
Thank you. I do want to come back and talk about some of my work with Empower NOLA at some point, because I'm really, really excited about that Robert Wood Johnson project to really, really give my community a voice to fix itself. Because there's nothing wrong with Black people that ending racism won't fix.
Hey, can somebody type that in right now?
I can't, sister. It doesn't let me type in there. So
man, I gotta type it in there. All right, well, we're gonna be signing off. Y'all hold the line and just wave bye to everybody. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.